dive into their emotions, their feelings, their needs, the better you're going to be able to communicate to them when marketing your book. You'll know what to say to help them connect with you more.
So if you're like me wondering what's the difference between brand, voice, messaging, and copy, and how the heck do we use them all on everything we do to market our books online, you are in for a treat. My guest today is my friend Lindsey Johnson. Lindsey is a messaging strategist and copywriter who supports women business owners by refining their marketing messages, amplifying their brand voice, and writing compelling copy so they are confident that their messaging will attract and convert their audience into clients. Lindsey is giving us some practical tips on discovering our brand voice and how we can communicate with our readers without always saying, "Buy my book." Plus, she's sharing creative ways to get reviews that share the transformation readers get after reading our books. So let's get to it. Hi, I'm Kim Stewart, and this is the Book Marketing Mania podcast. Let's learn and share together what's working now to meet new readers, market your message, and make a bigger impact online. Welcome, Lindsey, to the Book Marketing Mania podcast. We're so glad you're here today.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. So I gave everybody your professional bio in my introduction, but I wanted to share a fun fact that people might not know about you just from this conversation or following you online.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm not a super fun person, but that's not really true because I have a lot going on. But it was really hard for me to think of a fun fact, something that your audience will not know, and most of my audience doesn't know, to be quite honest, is that before I was married and then into our early married days before babies, I was really involved in my church worship team. I was a worship leader. I play a lot of instruments, not many of them well, but I can fake it till I make it kind of a thing to help the church worship team. And it was a really, really, really blessed season of my life that God clearly closed the door to, but hopefully I can get back to it someday in His timing. So that's something that not very many of my online audience actually knows about me.
Yeah, I had no idea. That's super fun. So you had to walk away with that when He called you to be a mom, right? And put your priorities first with your family. So I love that. Okay, so let's get down to the meat of our interview. The reason I wanted to bring Lindsey on, as I said in the introduction, is just to kind of unravel what all this is that we hear about branding, our voice, our messaging, our copy as authors. To kind of just tell us what each of those things are we always hear about and how we can implement it within our author platform. So, Lindsey, can you kind of give us a rundown of, the difference between our brand, our voice, our messaging, and our copy? Just an overview of those?
Yes, I'm really glad you asked this actually, because these are terms that feel almost really intangible. Like it's hard to really stick an accurate description on them because it's just hard to touch. They're not really tangible things. They're just kind of ideas. So, your brand, your messaging, your copy, and your voice, they're all very interwoven together. They all kind of have to be in relationship with each other to make your brand really strong. So let's try to break them down. We'll start with the brand. One of the best descriptions of a brand that I've ever heard, and I can't remember who said it or where I read it, but your brand is your audience's perception of who you are as a business. It's not necessarily what you say you are. It is how you present yourself online, how you interact with your clients and customers, and all the different little pieces that play together in order to create this perception of what your audience thinks you are. Because really what your audience thinks you are is the most important thing. It doesn't matter what you say you are if that's not what they feel or understand when they experience your brand itself, how you work with clients, how you ship out packages if you are a product-based business, when you mail out your book. So branding really has a lot to do with how you can help curate the perception of your audience. And your voice is how you show up with, your speaking, with your messaging online, your Instagram posts, your blogs. I mean, even the books you write are going to have pieces of your voice in them, and the voice is really how you project your message out into the world. And then copy and messaging are really similar as well, kind of like how your brand is, maybe this like overarching, idea and theme, and how your audience perceives your business. um, your messaging is also that same thing. It's who you are, it's who you're speaking to, it's the message you are getting out into the world, the message that God has called you to speak out into the world. And how you do that is through the copy. So the specific words that you use, that's the copy. So those are four really big ideas and components of a brand, of a business for any author. But they're all so interrelated that it's really hard to, separate. And yet they do have separate definitions and functions within the brand.
So I know, like specifically with authors, I think we sometimes get a little confused about our messaging, our brand, because we just get so focused on the books that we're launching at that time, right? Mm-hmm. And even though those kind of fit under the umbrella, I guess, of our big picture brand, can you kind of walk through that? Like, so as we think with authors, they put together a website, they put together their book page, which might be on their website or it might be on Amazon. They've got emails going out to their potential readers, and they've also, are posting on their social media channels. So can you kind of talk a little bit about each of those, where they might show up in those categories? The branding, the copy, the voice, and the messaging?
Yeah, that's a really good question. They're all going to show up in all the areas, just in different ways. So let's take maybe a website as a good example and a good place to start. A website is going to be this compilation of branding and of messaging and of copy and of design and of making it feel really beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. That's going to, speak to your audience and draw them in, to make them want to be involved. And by being involved, you want them to take action to buy your book. You want them to, join whatever community you might have online, to follow you on Instagram. So the brand itself, again, it's like how the audience perceives you. You want all of the website to be cohesive and consistent in that it shares who you are really clearly and who you're speaking to, who your books are for, but also be very audience driven, so that you are like, it's not always the Lindsey show. I like to say, like, you don't want your website to be the Lindsey show 24/7. You really want it to be focused on what need or struggle or pain point your offer solves. And for authors, it could be as basic as your book is entertaining, and that solves a frustration or a struggle or a pain point for your audience. Your book might be educational, your book might be inspiring, but all of those things always serve to solve a need. And you want to direct your brand, your messaging, your copy always towards that audience focus, so they can see how it will help and benefit their life. They can kind of picture actually how, picture themselves in the pages of your book. So showing up online really means showing up as who you are as a person, as a writer, and your heart behind the books that you're writing and the people you're serving through those books.
Just really hitting on the felt need. And I know a lot of authors really dig into that, like way back, when they start even proposing their book to an agent or a publisher, or even, themselves, if they're self-publishing, they're kind of putting together a plan, maybe even before they write the book, and they're starting to think about, what are my potential readers' problems that my book's going to solve. And so talking through that, so it sounds like you kind of have your overarching brand. Like, I know a lot of the authors I work with, they are in the Christian living field of books. And so they kind of have an overarching brand of, they're serving women of faith or moms of faith. And then maybe kind of drilling down into that, they might have different books for different audiences kind of under that umbrella. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%.
And so, do you have some practical tips or maybe some resources to share if authors just kind of are like, how do I even get started with my, like, I know what my book's about, but how do I get started with kind of identifying my brand and my voice and how to communicate that to potential readers?
Yeah, I would say to really get clear on who your book is for, because the more you can understand that audience, the more that you can really kind of dive into their emotions, their feelings, their needs. The better you're going to be able to communicate to them across all online platforms, like not just your book, but when marketing your book, you'll know what to say to help them connect with you more. And a really, really helpful exercise is to consider your core values as an author. And I know it could sound a little bit cheesy, but it's really important for branding as a whole, whether you're a small business, entrepreneur, or an author. It's going to be so, so important for you to really spell out what those core values are. Like, why do you do what you do? Why do you believe what you believe? And why are those things so important to you? And now think of it from your audience perspective. Are they going to hold similar core values to you? And the answer is probably going to be yes. At least a lot, if not all, of your core values are likely going to mirror or mimic the core values of your ideal audience, like your reader. And that's a really good starting place for finding common ground, for finding what you both, you as the author and then your audience, finding what you both hold really dear and important, like what matters most to both of you, and starting to write content about that, getting them to connect with your content because like super faith driven, super family driven, what kind of content can you create to help them relate to you based on what you find common ground in?
Oh gosh, I love that so much. So that kind of, I think, kind of leads us into the next question I wanted to ask you about was how can authors write copy, like their social media posts or their
Mm-hmm.
emails that are going out to their subscribers. How can they share, their brand and their book messages without specifically saying, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book? So it sounds like maybe
Mm-hmm.
they would, if they could kind of identify that, maybe what their brand stands for, their values, and how those are in common with their potential readers. They're focusing some of their content that direction. And then naturally their target readers would identify with them and want to connect with them more. Is that what you would suggest as far as, putting some copy out in your emails and social media posts that isn't saying always the same, buy my book?
Yes, so much so. Ugh, I love that so much. So, yes, those common values will help you connect. So, you can start writing even blog posts, but also emails, social media captions that are related to those core values. Even going back to a group program that I did several years ago, we really honed in on mission, vision, values, which is also another way to say like what's your focus and what's your purpose. And I really love the word purpose for your audience, can like authors and the purpose of these authors writing the books. So if you can take these three core things, like your mission or your purpose, your vision or your focus, and then your core values, dive into what those mean for you, and then you can extrapolate or pull out the themes that are also common to your ideal audience and just start writing content about those, because it's going to fast track your connection with them and want them to get to know you even better.
That makes a lot more sense because it's so hard, especially around book launch time when you just feel the pressure of getting your book out there, right? But it's just we kind of fall, I think, captive into well, I've got to tell people that my book's coming. I've got to tell them to buy it or pre-order it. But we don't really kind of step back and really dig into what kind of connection can we make with that target reader. And I think about that with
Mm,
so many authors that I just have fallen in love with, and their books have changed my life. And I think back to how did I even hear, did I hear about it from a friend or did I connect with them somehow? And I probably connected with them long before their book was even talked about, right? And just made that divine connection that, this is somebody whose
Hmm.
words are going to change my life. I really need to listen to what they have to say. But it wasn't necessarily by my books. It probably was long before they even mentioned the book. Or maybe if they did, it just came in so naturally through the things they were saying. So I love just having some ideas like that. So, when authors are getting ready to launch their books, so let's dig into a little more like the content idea of, our books are solving a problem for our readers and there's a transformation that's going to happen, right? I'm going to have a problem that I'm having in my life and I'm going to read for our audience, it's nonfiction. So, there's typically a solution, right, within the words of their books. So there's kind of a transformation that can happen throughout those pages. And by the time you have read the book, and so I know a lot of times authors want to send out advanced copies to reviewers or to influencers that might share about the book or give them an endorsement for the book. Can you kind of give us some tips on some questions that we can ask either of our early readers or endorsers, people posting reviews so that we can really dig into what that audience transformation is and be able to kind of communicate that in our copy as well?
Yeah. So just for a little bit of clarification, it's almost like you're asking for a testimonial from these early readers and early reviewers, correct?
Yeah. So instead of it just always being, this is a great book, read this book, like I really like chapter 3, or,
Yeah.
like how can we kind of,
Yep.
motivate them to maybe to give their testimonial a little differently.
Well, no, it's exactly how I ask, past clients or students for testimonials. It's a really similar process to asking for, a book review or podcast review. And I like to give them a little bit of direction because people don't necessarily know what you're looking for when you're asking for a book review. They don't necessarily know what's going to be the most helpful unless they've been in this world for years like you and I have to know what makes a good review or a good testimonial. So I would ask them to talk a little bit about what their life looked like before reading the book. And this is very broad, but it asks them to pinpoint what kinds of struggles and what kind of emotions they were feeling before reading the book. And then I would ask them step 2 to give their experience about what they thought as they were reading the book, maybe their biggest takeaways, what they really, really appreciated about it, the thing that hit home the most, maybe the thing that gave them a gut check. And then number 3 would be, what is your life like now afterwards? And again, it feels kind of dramatic to say it that way. So you may want to rephrase and reframe this depending on how you would write copy, how you would phrase an email. But you want them to speak to how the book made a difference. That might be a better way to phrase it than change their life, because will it be life shattering, life changing? Maybe, but it might just be that it made a really small but impactful difference in their life. And that's what you want them to speak to. So the past, before they read the book, the during the book reading process, and then afterwards, what made a difference, like what was the biggest impact that the book had on their life. And that's what you're going to want your whole audience to see, is that this person came from point A before reading the book. They were in this struggle, they were in this pain point, they had this frustration, and they walked the journey. They walked the little path, and now here they are at point B after reading the book, and this is how awesome it was. And that's what you want to ask them to share.
That's, yeah, so great. You're right. Because I think of like this huge transformation, right? Which it can be, but it could be,
Right.
yeah, just some small impacts of something, especially those of us that like to read lots of books, right? We have lots of
Mm-hmm.
different impacts through them all. So, yeah, that would be so great. Because I know so many people that are doing the early readers or they're sending them out for endorsements. Or trying to get the early blog reviews, even some bloggers that do those
Mm-hmm.
things. I think those are really great questions to ask.
But
So, as
definitely
we
provide direction, because without direction, people won't know exactly what you're looking for. And the last thing you want is to be disappointed in a book review that you got just because the direction wasn't really clear on what you were looking for.
Oh gosh, that's great advice. Yes. So kind of sharing with them what you're looking for, where the questions you're asking, but then yeah,
Hmm.
giving a little more direction on the answers you're hoping to get. I love that idea because it's so helpful, right? When you're the one
Or
doing
even
it.
an example. Yeah, even
Uh-huh.
if you have an example of like a really good one you got for a book, the last book you wrote, you got an amazing early reader review. Use that as an example. You could blur out names if you wanted to keep it anonymous, but say, this is kind of the format that I'm looking for. Would you be able to write a review similar to this?
Because then you can just we can I was thinking like you can just turn around and use that, right? I love when I see authors sharing their
Hmm.
reviews on social media or in their emails.
Yeah,
Just let
yes.
just kind of reminding us if we haven't bought the book that there's definitely a reason we should. So as we dig into some of these ideas that you shared today and we start kind of our eyes are a little more open to it and we might start noticing how other authors are sharing about the book on their websites and their emails on social media, how can you recommend that we kind of study other what other people are doing but not necessarily copy? Because I know it's so tempting to just like go copy all the copy from somebody's
Hmm.
Instagram post or their websites. But can you encourage us how we can just make sure we're studying and being inspired by someone else, and then putting that into our own world and words and values and missions for our readers versus just straight up copying it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. I would say start being really observational about why you're connecting with a certain post. Is it because they're being really vulnerable? Is it because they're sharing something personal? Is it because they're sharing a sneak peek of the process? Is it just because you fangirl all over this person and you love everything that they put out? So start watching for different trends that pop up on social media that you can start using in your own content schedule. And everything you write is going to be from your heart. So I don't think there's as much worry about being, really plagiarizing everything, but just being aware that copy is not a good thing nor a God honoring thing to do. And we can use other people's posts as inspiration and examples by still turning it and making it our own. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. I think copies, it's definitely something I struggle with. And I know it's what a lot of people
Hmm.
struggle with. And so we think, okay, well, we hear this person's doing a great job with their book page, or this person's doing a great job sharing about their book on social media. And it's so tempting just to, go, okay, well, let me just go copy what they're doing and then insert my stuff
Yeah.
into like it. Just, if this is such great copy, then that's what, it just makes it sound easier, right? And faster to do it. But it's, yeah, just that
Hmm.
inspiration that we're all different, right? We need to all do it our own way, but we can learn from each other and be inspired, but not necessarily just go, okay, here's some great copy to use. Or, just even how readers are
Absolutely.
asked. I mean, I'm sorry, how authors are asking the readers for that feedback, like you said previously. So yeah, I just wanted to see if you had
Mm-hmm.
maybe some tips on that. So this has all been so good, Lindsey. And I know copy and branding is such a much bigger topic than we had time for today. So, will you share some resources that you have for our listeners that they can connect with you afterwards and continue this conversation? And if they want to really dig into more about what their brand stands for as an author, or writing copy for their website or their emails or their social media, all the things that how they can connect with you and get some resources from you?
Yes, I would love to connect. You can find me at verityandco.com. That is my website. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Verity and Co. And I would love to point your listeners to verityandco.com/writing workshop, where they can grab a freebie. It is a 5-day email workshop. So for 5 days, you will get emails to your inbox to help you really target who your ideal audience is and help get them engaged with your brand. So, how to identify them, how to speak their language, how to listen and respond to what they need from you. What are the things that are going to really resonate and connect and give value? And also share how you can help them. Help air quotes through your books, like your books are providing that guidance, that help, that value, and how you can share about it in a non-icky, salesy way. And finally, I just really want this workshop to be able to help each and every one of you learn how to write in a genuine way that brings you sales, but also, is joyful to you. And it feels like it's a good fit for who you are as an author and your brand. So that's at verityandco.com/writing workshop for that freebie.
Great. Thank you so much. That'll be awesome. I will put all those links in the show notes and make sure that everybody can connect with you, especially over on Instagram. I know you hop on and do videos on there quite a few times and share about branding, but also just share about getting to know you. And I so love that. So this has been so helpful to our listeners, Lindsey. I so appreciate you coming on today and sharing and encouraging the authors that listen to the Book Marketing Mania podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Kim.
Okay, y'all. So now that you've learned about the messaging and copy of your author brand, be sure to check out episode 8 with Angela Bauma on designing your author website so readers know what you have to offer. I so appreciate you tuning in to the podcast. If you are learning new ways to meet new readers and market your message, I would be so honored if you would leave a review for the show. You can do that on Apple Podcast, or feel free to leave a comment on an Instagram post or on our show notes. I'd be so grateful for your help in letting authors know about the Book Marketing Mania podcast, and I will put links to all those in the show notes. Thanks so much, and see you next week.